Hi, Madison. I was grading your paper for the Plates and Earthquakes Part 1, and looking at your distribution of dots on your graph, I'm thinking that you didn't understand how to graph the earthquakes that were on here. So the first thing is that, so I added in some numbers here in red just because the yellow, it kind of came across the yellow a little bit when you turned it in, and so it was a little hard to read. So I added in across the top here what the numbers were here in black. So it's 65, 70, and 75, which means that the prime meridian is way over here, right? Because 0 is the prime meridian. And then when we look at, and that's the longitude, and when we're looking at the latitude, we're at 15 degrees south, which means that the equator is up here, and the numbers over here in the data set, they're negative because in this particular data set, they show negative latitude as being south, and then positive latitude would be north. And so each one of these lines, I went ahead and numbered those as well because the big numbers they put in were just in increments of 5. And so I put in the smaller numbers in here as well, so you can see that each line is worth 1. And so on this first data point, if it's negative 17.84, then it's almost to negative 18, which would be 8. This is 18 south, and we know that because, see, this is 15 degrees south on here. So we would come to 18, and then we're coming across to 66.6. So once again, these lines are also 1. So if this is 65, then this is 66 right here. This one here is 66, and then here is 67, 68, 69 is right in there, and then we have 70 on there. So we would come from 18, we come over across to 66, and then it wasn't quite to 18, and it's a little bit more than 66. It's actually 66.6, so it's halfway in between, and then up just a little bit. So your dot would be right around in there. There we go, it's a little better. And then, so that would be where your first dot is. And I can tell because there's no dots that you had that were around this, that I'm thinking that you didn't understand how to plot your points. So we'll go ahead and do a couple of more just so you get an idea of how to do it correctly. So this one is negative 21.11. So here's 20, so here's 21 would be right here. And then it's 67.2. So we said this is 66, this is 67. We come down to 21 here, and our dot would be right around there. Our next one is negative 18.98, which is basically 19, right? And then also at 67. So, and it's just a little bit on the other side, so we're almost halfway to 68. So we're just here at 67. We're going to go back up a little bit to 19. So here's 20. Here's 19. And then we said we were about halfway. So we would have a dot. Okay, so we're going to do one more. So the next one is negative 19 again, and then 67.47. So it's going to be right around in the same area. This one is a little bit greater than 19. So our dot's going to be just a little bit below, just a little bit to the left, because it was also a little bit greater on the 67.47. So you can see how I was going through and plotting the points, and that's how you need to plot all of the points. And it's on both this graph and then also so on the map here, and then also on the other template. So this one here that you submitted. You see how your distribution of dots here on this one looks a lot like your distribution of dots did on this one over here. So we want to keep our distribution. We want to make sure that we're plotting correctly. So you're going to plot the same way over here that you did on that one. So it's a little hard for me to do because it's sideways on here, but it's the same basic thing except for on this one. Now you're doing depth off the data. And so when you look at, you'll do the same thing. So you're just going across to where it was on here. And then let me see if I can find the right sheet that had the. Here's the data set. So we're using longitude and depth. So this one is 66.64 and 269. And so back on your part here, it was 66. So this is 67. 66 would be halfway. And then we said the depth was 269. So 250. So halfway between would be 275, right? So it's just a little bit less than half. And we would come across to halfway in between here to 66, right? And then we were about halfway here as well because we were at 269. So just a little bit less than halfway. Okay? So you need to make sure that you're plotting your points correctly. So if you want to go ahead and resubmit, you'll need to go ahead and change your the points that you plotted. And then you're going to want to go back also after that, and you're going to want to check your answers to all of the next things, because your answers, a lot of them were based off of what you saw in your data set here. So you want to make sure that you're answering those questions based off of the data set. The questions in part 2, 3, and 4 they're not an actual quiz. They're just set up like a quiz, but they're not counted as a quiz. So you can turn it in as many times as you need to, but I would suggest that you go back through. I'll go in and put a score on them, but you're going to want to go back in and look at those again and base your answers off of accurate data. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks.